All right. Bring the camera back to me. Welcome to the 2980 Network. This is Open Mic Night. Open Mic Night is your source for everything Apple. We talk about news. We talk about new product updates. We talk about anything that remotely relates to Apple. So if you're interested in that, stick around. I think we've got a great show for you this week. This show is part of the 2980 Network, like I said. So all of the show notes, information, subscription links, anything that you need is found over at 2980network.com. But this show is also a member of the Geeks Network. The Geeks Network is a compilation of a bunch of tech-related podcasts. So if you like technology, which I'm guessing you do if you're listening to this show, if you like Windows, home servers, anything, smart home, all of that stuff, thegeeksnetwork.com. Head over there and you can find a podcast, I'm sure, that fits your needs and fits your liking. So check them out. We also want to thank WLMNradio.com. Roger and everyone over there are fantastic. They are in Grafton, West Virginia. They do terrestrial radio out there, and they also broadcast online. So I want to thank them for rebroadcasting our show during the week. Again, that's WLMNradio.com. Quickly, I do want to mention, we mentioned this in the last show, but we've been gone for 2 weeks. We are doing our yearly survey. So if you want to help us out, and this is like, if I could have you do one thing all year, click on one link and do like a 5-minute thing, it would be to take this survey. It really helps us out, helps us know what you like, what you don't like about the show, helps us kind of gauge how we're doing. And we do it yearly, so we're going to do it once a year. And that's over at 2980network.com/survey. So if you can head over there, again, it takes like 5 minutes to fill out, maybe less than that. It's only 10 questions long. You can head over there, and that really does help us out. So thank you, and that's 2980network.com/survey. So it has been 2 weeks since we did our last show, and it was completely unexpected, and we're going to get to that story in a little bit. But before we do, a vital component to these stories that we're going to be telling is my co-host, Colin. Colin, it's been 2 weeks. Did you enjoy your time off?
I did. I don't know what I did with my time off, but I enjoyed it.
Got refreshed, had a little more time to yourself, got caught up on stuff, I'm sure. But we can, I guess that's a perfect segue into the story of why we've been gone for 2 weeks. Now, if you guys watch Jim's show over the Home Gadget Geeks, if you guys listen there, we told this story already. But basically, I tried to be a kid again, and it didn't work out for me, and I ended up breaking my leg and my ankle all at the same time. So I dislocated it, broke 3 bones, needed to have surgery, and Colin was there for the whole event. He got to witness this firsthand. So his actually recollection of how it all went down is probably better than mine, considering I think I was in shock because I don't remember much of how it happened. But we tried to go to, or we didn't try, we succeeded at going to a place called Sky Zone. It's one of those places, I'm sure you guys have them around you, where it's pretty much an entire warehouse full of trampolines, and the entire floor is a trampoline, the walls are trampolines. They have all sorts of like fun activities set up. You can do like dodgeball on trampolines, you can dunk basketballs and all that sort of stuff. Well, in the midst of that, at the end, you should never do anything where your friend says, hey, try this, especially if the time before your friend said, try this freshman year, you also broke your leg. So I'm 2 for 2 with this friend of mine, not Colin. Well, you'll say it's not Colin, it's one of our other buddies. But tried to do a little backflip off the wall, and needless to say, did not land well. And
it wasn't a backflip. I'm just going to throw that out there. It wasn't a backflip.
Or was it a front flip? Because we were jumping off the side and trying to do a flip. Okay, front flip. You're right. It was a front flip. And yeah, see, this is why I have you, because my recollection of the thing, and I don't know. Colin was like, "Was I in shock? Like, was my face just?" I don't remember anything about it.
You just went silent. The only words you said were "ow," and like, "No, that hurts."
Yeah, because I remember hearing like the pop, and then nothing.
Yeah, you came down weird, like in between the trampoline and where the pad is.
Yeah,
and your foot that hit the trampoline is the one that overcorrected and took all the weight. And it was one of those things, like, it happened. I turned and looked right at the kid, because this place is run by children, basically.
Okay, that was the weird part. Yeah.
No offense to them. I'm sure it's owned by adults, but the only people there, aside from us and some parents, no one was over the age of 19, I think.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So, like, I looked right at that, like, the kid's face went whiter than yours did, I think.
I remember looking up at him, and I think he was like just in pure like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is so bad. Like, things are so bad right now. So luckily, our
he was
buddy
asking,
Ian, go ahead.
I was gonna say he was asking for your information. Like he's talking to me. He's like, "What's his name?" I look at you and I'm like, "Mike, what's your name?"
Yeah, I remember you being like,
I was like, "Make him talk."
he broke his leg. He's not like he can't like not talk. He didn't have a head injury or anything like that.
Yeah, I was like, he's perfectly capable.
Right. And so luckily, my buddy Ian, who ironically enough was the one who told me to do this, is also a paramedic. So he got me splinted up with a pizza box and some Ace bandages because, surprise, surprise, a trampoline place, we asked them if they have a medic bag, and they bring over like a bag with like some Band-Aids, some Ace wrap. And I was like, okay, this is not going to work. They wheeled me out on a office chair, which I don't even know if you could call it an office chair because it didn't even roll that well. It was pretty jankety, but long story short, they took me to the ER, got me all set. A few days later, ended up having surgery on it. I have a bunch of really cool hardware in my leg now. But then after that, obviously, they have to put you on a lot of pain meds. So I was kind of out of it for the next week. And so we took 2 weeks off for that reason. But that was kind of the fun little intro story. If you guys were looking for an entertaining little story, everything's going well now. They've actually already got me in a boot, non-weight bearing for the next month and a half. And then obviously the thing that sucks about this all though is it was my right leg, so I can't drive at all. So I'm having to be driven around by my wife and some friends, and luckily they've been able to get me to work, to school, and to all different places. But everything should be back to good. I'm almost done with the pain meds. I don't take many at all except for like before I go to bed. So everything's going well. There were like 2 of you who actually emailed me, and you didn't know why we weren't having a show, but you just asked if everything was all right when we did on the show. So that is the explanation of why there wasn't a show, but thank you for checking in on me. And everything is going much better now. It was not a week ago if you had asked me, but it is going better now. I guess we should we're just going to continue on with the personal stories here just to kind of get the show rolling. There was one more interesting story, and this is Apple related, unlike the other story. But my buddy was picking me up from work, and apparently at some point between the door of work and his car, I think it was actually at the car, because I'm hopping around on one leg and we're loading in I have like a little scooter thing that I'm riding around right now. I dropped my phone on the street right by the curb. And I didn't realize it. We were driving around after that. We were just we had some time before class. So we were just driving around, and I went to text someone and realized I didn't have my phone. I was like, oh shoot, I left it on the bench, I'm sure at work. Well, I utilized Find My iPhone. So if you guys have not enabled that feature, you should definitely do it. And the nice thing about that is you can log in from you can log in from a web browser or from someone else's iPhone if they have the Find My iPhone app. So he had the app, I used his phone, I log in, and I see that it is now 7 miles away across the river. If you know Nebraska at all, we're on the border here in Omaha between Nebraska and Iowa. It is now in Iowa, in Council Bluffs, 7 miles away. And I'm fearing the worst. I'm like, this thing is definitely stolen. Fantastic. Okay, now what do we do? And so it's still reporting a location though. So I asked my buddy Ian, I'm like, okay, so what should we do? Do we go and get it? He's like, yeah, I think we do. And then we start having the conversation of, okay, well, do you call the cops? Do you have the cops meet us there? Do you call and ask them, hey, what's the procedure here? Like, I know where it's at, but do I go get it? And then we started to think to ourselves, if someone was going to steal a phone, they wouldn't just go, because it was at Fazoli's at a lunch restaurant. They wouldn't just go have lunch and they wouldn't leave the phone on. I think most thieves nowadays are pretty smart and would at least turn the phone off so that you can't track them. So we decided we didn't need any backup in this situation. So we headed over to Fazoli's, and we had this game plan in case it was someone that was trying to steal it. We went in the door. One of us went one way, one went the other way. And then on Find My iPhone, I pinged it to make it make a noise. And we hear it in the restaurant. So we were glad that it's at least in there. And we hear it, and we kind of go around, and there is this adorable older couple sitting there, and they're having lunch. And the funny part was they couldn't hear it ringing very well. They're like, do you hear that? Is that something? And so Ian walks up first, and I walk up behind him. He's like, hey, I think you have my buddy's phone. And the wife was so cute. She's like, hey, do you still have that phone? She was talking to her husband, and he whips it out of his pocket. He has it. He's like, whoa. And they were just shocked. Like, almost to the point where I think they were a little bit scared as to how we found them, because they're like, this is your phone? I'm like, how'd you find us? I'm like, oh, I have a tracking on the phone, and I can use an app. Like, you can like use an app to track. And so I explained it to him a little bit. I was like, yeah, it's Find My iPhone. You can log in, and as long as you have it activated, I can see exactly where the phone is as long as the phone's on. And so they thought that was kind of cool, and they gave it back to me. And the lady actually works at my office, and she says, oh, my husband was picking me up for lunch, and then I was going to take it to the security desk when I got back because we found it when I was getting in the car. And I was It's like, oh, no problem. So we grabbed the phone. It had one little tire mark over the front, but this was the surprising part. He said he ran it over. So when he pulled to pick her up, he ran it over. And when he got out to get it, there was a complete tire mark over. So it landed on its back. So the screen is facing up, and they ran over the top of it, and it is perfectly fine. That was just a dust mark. The back of the case is a tad scratched from being like drug across the ground, I think. But this thing, it's flawless. There's not a scratch on the screen. It's not broken. The touch, and this is the one that has actually the pressure touch on it, and that works fine. So I was shocked when he said he ran it over. I was instantly expecting to grab it and like have it be broken, but it wasn't. And so I got lucky twice. First of all, it wasn't stolen. 3 times actually. Second of all, the couple was super nice and wanted to give it back to me. And number 3, it didn't break when it got ran over. So those were 3 awesome things that happened to me. So besides the leg, I've had good luck in the past week, needless to say. We were kind of disappointed we didn't get to have like a big confrontation. But after this, so I post on Facebook about how how this whole thing transpired and how I was glad there's still, good people in the world and no one's trying to steal it. And of course, someone posts an article that apparently when this happens, you are not supposed to go track down the people. Like, you're supposed to call the cops and get help, because there has been kind of a history, and especially recent history, of people actually getting like murdered when they go to get their phone, getting shot and stuff like that. So, which I had heard about. I would think that would happen, but I never thought it would go all the way to like shooting the person. I would think like, the guy would run away and steal your phone. But Colin, you actually told me like, no, dude, that happens. It definitely happens.
Oh, it's the same thing as Craigslist. Like, now I wouldn't say it's simpler than Craigslist now, which is awful. I'm not trying to diss Craigslist. I've used it before to find things. But, if you lose your phone, which, God forbid, someone loses their phone.
Right.
It's one of those things that if it's gone, $600 is much better than...
Yeah, your life.
Death.
Yeah. And I guess the ideal situation would be you call the cops and hopefully they'll go get it for you if you know the location. But so one thing I learned in all of this, though, is as we're driving, him and I are having the conversation of, okay, because there's now a few options you can do with your phone. First of all, you can ping it if it's lost, so it'll make a sound. Second of all, you can put it into lost mode. Now, when you put it into lost mode, it asks for a phone number, and you can put in, like if you have another friend with you as a phone, you put in their phone number and it pretty much pops up on the screen. It locks the phone and pops up on the screen the phone number. Now, initially we were thinking, hey, let's not do that in case this is stolen. We don't want to alert him that we know where it's at. We don't want to alert him and then have him turn it off. But what I did learn was that lost mode actually prevents him from doing anything with the phone. So if your phone is stolen, you put it into lost mode, he can no longer power it down. So his options are to break the phone, I guess, to get it off, soak it in water or something like that, because there's no removable battery on the iPhone, or to, get rid of it. But it's going to stay on for as long as the battery is charged. It's going to stay on and keep sending out the location. So you should use the lost mode if your phone is lost, because it prevents someone from actually powering it off and you no longer knowing where the phone is. So we did learn a few things in the overall process, that you should use lost mode, and that there are still good people in the world. That was good to know. I was glad to hear that. But I think it's time we can get past the personal stories. I hope you guys enjoy that little personal side note of Open Mic Night, and we can jump right into actual Apple news. The reason you guys listen to the podcast, we need to start talking about some Apple stuff. And there's actually a few stories that we missed in the 2 weeks we were gone that we were actually really excited to talk about, or at least excited to bring up with you guys. Now, we're not going to go super in-depth into these stories, mainly because a lot of them involve you taking a side with an opinion on whether you think they are right or wrong in this, but we just want to report kind of what happened in general. So Colin actually brought this to my attention. Obviously, as I was injured and on pain meds, I wasn't doing much coherent thought. Like, those things weren't happening. And I definitely wasn't reading any Apple news. So Colin was keeping me up to date. And so he added this to the show notes and said, hey, we should probably talk about this. And I agree. But Colin, fill us in on what's going on with, Apple and the government and all this crazy stuff.
So long story short is that with the San Bernardino shootings, one of the terror suspects, their phone was recovered, but the phone was locked. And so when the phone is locked and you don't know the passcode 10 attempts, if you have it turned on, it's an option to turn on or not turn on. After 10 attempts, it wipes the phone. So whatever's on there, gone, whatever it may be. What happened was they recovered the phone, the FBI. They tried to reset the iCloud password, I believe, is what it was. And in turn, kind of put themselves in a corner with the phone where they couldn't really do anything. Things weren't going to work, and they were going to hit the maximum 10 without ever figuring out what it was.
Right.
So what they did was they, under the All Writs Act of 1786.
So current.
So 200 and what? 30 years ago now?
They had iPhones back then, right?
Yeah. So under this act, they were able to issue, it wasn't a warrant, but issue I can't think of the word, and I was going to look it up, and now I just sound like a dummy. But,
well, ironically, this is the story I probably should have kept up on being a law student, but I didn't. So they issued, it was just a court order that Apple needs to comply and help them unlock this phone. But Apple cannot do that. As Tim Cook said in his letter, which he wrote the day after being served with this, that Apple cannot do this because the piece of technology that they want to give the back end to the security or to the system there, that OS doesn't exist. Right.
And Tim Cook's argument was saying, we aren't going to create this for you when it could, it's the master key, basically, where this one piece of software could unlock any phone anywhere around the world. And everyone on whatever side they were falling on, a lot of people were saying it's just this one phone. But then it started trickling out that different organizations, whether it be the FBI or different police organizations, had done the same thing towards Apple, saying they need to unlock a certain phone for whatever reason. Each time Apple has said no. And it came out earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, that a New York court, which it was one of the first cases that someone had issued an order to Apple, came out and said that Apple's in the right. Apple doesn't need to unlock a phone. It was for a meth dealer. They recovered this phone and wanted to figure out more. The judge threw out the case. And so when I saw that, after all of this talk of people either saying they're with Apple or with the FBI, to me, it sets precedent where they don't need to, whatever judge is going to see this is going to see that case has done it. And I think other cases that have come out, which at most I had heard was like 13 other cases, 13 other phones.
Yeah.
They're just going to throw them out. They're just going to be like, no, like this is obviously asking for something that, one, doesn't exist, and two, is going to open a whole world of problem.
And see, and that's the interesting part. And PTD in the chat room says, so they were able to reset the iCloud password and got an iCloud backup actually from 6 weeks before the shooting. So they were able to get that, but what they wanted was that backdoor in. And the interesting part about this, and the reason I kind of wanted to bring it up was because, and then that was a great synopsis of what happened. What it reminds me of is that we're still in this transition phase from kind of like physical items and the laws being regarding physical things compared to things that live in data form, on our phones, on our computers, on servers. And this is not the first time we've seen this. I mean, all these companies, especially companies that run big servers that store a lot of data, are always asked for these. Like, hey, this guy has an account with you and he's storing, let's pretend this is, back when they were going after the companies that were storing, pirated movies, right? So this guy has an account, he's storing all these movies on you and he's sharing these from your servers, give us access. So this is not the first time we've seen it. But the one problem I think people jump to the conclusion, and from since Colin told me about this story, I was kind of keeping up on it a little bit just in the post, and I was reading a lot of comments from people who were saying, well, like they should give the backdoor, they should have to, because of the fact that pretend this is someone's house, they're trying to get into a house and they issue a warrant, they have to open up, or they can kind of get in however they need to if they have a judge issue warrant. And they're like, so it's the same exact thing. But I think this is distinctly different, and we got to be quick. We can't be quick to just instantly like compare these digital things to real world applications and just kind of retroactively applying old law to these new scenarios that we haven't encountered before. And I think that's the problem, because I don't think it is Apple's duty to have to issue this backdoor. Imagine if they did, and it would instantly become Apple's business of doing this for all these organizations, and they wouldn't be able to focus on what they do. That's not Apple's job. That's not what they're supposed to do. So it's kind of interesting and someone in the chat room, Marie says, who owns the data? Apple? Can the government sue Apple or accuse them of being an accomplice to the crime? And that's a good question, but they don't own the data. It's the people that own it. Now it's a completely different story with, iTunes and those sort of the music and stuff like that. But this is people's personal stuff that is on their phone. So it
doesn't feed into any. It's not like Google where it feeds into another server and that information is constantly being kind of cycled. Apple is very not disconnected. Apple's obviously very connected, but from headquarters to your phone, there is zero connection almost. I wouldn't say zero. It's very close.
I do see in the future us going, so when you think of wiretaps, right? Phone companies pretty much allow the government, when they have the right to tap your phone lines. And in a sense, let's pretend this person is using iMessage, right? iMessage goes to the Apple servers, just like the phone lines go through whatever phone company you have. And it would be kind of the same sort of thing of, hey, they're using a service like iMessage with which you control. See, I think that's the difference is okay, they control the servers. iMessage is a service of Apple compared to just, hey, we're going to give you backdoor access into the entire phone that is owned by someone else and all of their data is on the phone. So I definitely need to do more research on this because it's just interesting from a law side. And so in the next week, I kind of want to revisit this next week because first of all, I think we're going to get more news on how these courts are going to handle this in the next week. And number two, I kind of want to I need to do my own personal research. I feel behind and that doesn't sit well with me. But Colin, would you agree though that it is different than things we've encountered in the past, and people want to apply old law to these new things when what we need actually is to sit down, think about this, and create new laws?
No, and I completely agree with that. And also for the fact where I was just thinking, as you were saying, when it comes to iMessage, I feel like a lot of what people are looking for now, a lot of what's on iPhones isn't Apple related. So if they're looking for something that might be social media based, it's no longer Apple to say yes or no, you can do this. It's Twitter or it's Facebook or it's Google to come in and be or for them to go to those different sources. And so at one point I heard that they were just looking for they wanted to see the phone numbers that were in there and kind of things like that. And at that point, that's stored somewhere. I wouldn't say that Apple owns it or has it stored themselves, but if that's really what they're looking for, I don't know.
Well, it comes down to whose responsibility is it? You bring up a good point. There's all sorts of services on this phone. And PTD said in the chat, he said, except iMessage is encrypted and only decrypted on the device, so a wiretap wouldn't be possible. And that's my exact point, is that right now they can't do this with iMessage, but are they going to be able to force Apple to do it just like, I know phone lines aren't encrypted. I know they're not, and it's technically easier technology-wise to do the wiretap. But what I'm saying is that the phone companies have to do it. They have to comply with those, right? They can't say, oh no, those are our lines and that's our customer's conversation and no, government, sorry, you can't do that. They can't do it. Now, so I don't think the encryption really has anything to do with them, anything to do with it. It's just bringing up a point of, are they going to force Apple to do that like they do with the phone companies? It's just some analogy to kind of make these connections kind of make a little bit more in sense. And makes sense, sorry. And Bernie in the chat room also says, can you infringe on the rights of a dead person? So if they pass away, what do you do? Interesting thing about that is, I'm not really sure on the current laws of it, but there's these all sorts of companies that are coming out now. Basically, you give them all your digital life, I would call it, your digital life access to stuff, your Facebook and everything. And when you die, they will execute whatever you have told them to do. So if you tell them to delete things, if you tell them, they pretty much, it's kind of like a last will and testament for your digital life. It's kind of cool. So these companies are coming out with that because that is a big thing you're seeing now is when people pass away, all their life still lives online. And sometimes that's not taken care of, especially if people don't know the passwords. And a lot of companies are having to deal with this in weird ways. Like, okay, do we give access to their spouse if they pass away? Is that allowed? Or, we didn't technically get permission from the person to do that. One company that's doing something very interesting is LastPass. So on Home Gadget Geeks, we had Amber Gott on from LastPass, and they were explaining, so LastPass, if you don't know, it's a password management application. So you create an account, and it's a password vault. So you usually install the extension into Chrome or Safari or whatever you're using. And as you're browsing the web, you can save different passwords into this vault. So you all of a sudden have this vault that has all your passwords in it. And what it does is it pretty much allows you to have easy access to your passwords. It can autofill them. It can also create really complicated passwords, but that's not the point of the conversation. It's a great password management company, but what they're doing is in your account, you can go in and kind of set your emergency settings. So if something were to happen to me, and this is a great company to do it, so if something were to happen to me, I have it set so that Hannah can go in and she can basically send them a request. It says, hey, something's happened to Michael. He's no longer able to access his account. I need access to it. So I say in my account who can go in and do that if something were to happen to me. And that is great because it already has all my passwords to my banking, to my social media. And so she would then have access to everything she would need to do and take care of whatever she needed to take care of. So just that's kind of a side note of this whole thing, but I think it's starting to come around, and that was a great point by Bernie to bring that up, because when you do pass away, kind of what happens. But I think companies are starting to realize that and kind of get back into the conversation of, okay, yeah, you're right, digital life is a lot different. We don't have policies set in place for when people pass away, and I think we need to start getting them. So we'll revisit this next week and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Obviously, it brings up some great conversations. So thank you guys in the chat room for keeping up the conversation and talking about it. And that's exactly what we want from the chat room. This is a good time to mention, if you guys are listening to the podcast form, which is most of you, you guys can come out Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific, over at 2980network.com/live. You can watch the show live, and you can also get involved in the chat room like we've been doing during this show. All right. So the next piece of news was a kind of a shocking one that we had come out this Monday morning. People woke up Monday morning, or a little bit actually over the weekend. I heard this was happening on Sunday, and all of a sudden their Ethernet port on their Mac computers was just not working, completely not working. So the way this happened was Apple accidentally blacklisted the Ethernet port with an update that came out. Now, this was not an update that came out through the Apple Store. This is actually updates that automatically come through to your computer, and it is actually what it's meant for is the new system integrity protection that was instituted into El Capitan. And so they issued a small update into that and actually accidentally blacklisted the Ethernet port. Now, the people that were affected were the people that their computer downloaded the update. And again, you would have no clue if your computer got this update or not. And if they happen to restart their computer before Apple issued the fix, they were quick on the fix, but it wasn't too quick. I think it was at least half a day or up to a day before the updates were rolling out. So if they restarted their computer before the update happened, they no longer had Ethernet. Now, obviously, this could be a problem for people who don't have Wi-Fi in their home, which there still are a lot of people out there. I actually run everything on Ethernet in my house as much as I can. Obviously, my phones and stuff are on Wi-Fi, and I have Wi-Fi, but my computer is wired in, so it would have been a problem for me, but I hadn't restarted my computer. But they did issue a fix quickly. Now, the people who obviously were not able to were not able to get the update, they had restarted their computer too soon, they were fine as long as they had Wi-Fi, because when they got on Wi-Fi, they were able to, their computer automatically downloaded the new update. And then Apple came out with another article for people who have no connection. So if they didn't have Wi-Fi and they were relying on their wired connection, there was a way to get a patch to their computer, which was nice to see. But that is a big mistake by Apple to completely eliminate your Ethernet port. Almost so much so that I don't know how that happens. Like, how do you eliminate an essential piece of hardware on your computer?
Well, I mean, just as PTD just said, like jokingly saying he wish he had an Ethernet to get broken on the Mac Pro.
Right.
I mean, it's completely true. Like maybe that whatever they sent wasn't something that was supposed to get sent to a computer that had an Ethernet, but how are they supposed to distinguish the two? Because Ethernet's turned off to however many computers have been sold or bought that don't have an Ethernet anymore.
Yeah.
So I mean,
oh, that's why I would struggle to buy a new laptop because I run everything on Ethernet. Obviously, you'd have to do Thunderbolt or USB-C or something. But
yeah, I mean, I would struggle to do that just because new laptops are stupid expensive.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, real quick, we're actually going to hop back to the story because PTD had a good point, and Colin, you had a good point too. Colin, do you want to just mention what you guys were talking about right there?
Well, so PTD saying that Apple lacks the encryption keys to decrypt the message as only the user has them. So that would require them to do what Tim Cook came out saying, that they're asking them to write an OS that doesn't exist. And that's really where the argument started.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted you to talk about that, because that is the entire argument.
Yeah, them saying that they don't want to create this because sure, they're creating this for this one phone, and that's what they're being told. But as it's been proven time and again, hackers from anywhere in the world are very easily able to get wherever they want to go, apparently. And if it's in the hands of the government, or if it's in the hands of Apple, or if it's in the hands of whomever, somehow someone will try and find a way to get it. And if it gets in the wrong hands, it sounds so like bad, like action movie, that it fell into the wrong hands. But it's true. Like if this piece of OS were to be used by someone other than the intended recipient, so many things could go wrong. And that's the big privacy point. It's not so much that someone could all of a sudden see everything you're doing,
right?
Because so many people put everything they're doing out online anyway.
Yeah,
it's more the fact that someone could get into your phone on the back end and like destroy things.
Right. So, yep. So that's what it came down to. Apple did not have access. That does not exist. Do they need to create it? And so that was, a good summation of that. But okay, so we'll hop back down. So to continue the Ethernet port story. So, it's kind of a big blunder, and you kind of wonder how it happened. So that system integrity protection, when you think about kind of what that does, if you can kind of think about Windows and how they have drivers for certain things, they're called KEX, like KEXTS. And that's what this system protects, is it protects those. And actually, when they went and that update came out, the Ethernet port was blacklisted. So like I said earlier, that is kind of how it all happened. And then they realized their blunder and quickly corrected it. But all should be good now. If your Ethernet port is still not working, hop on another device, and Apple issued a article on it. You can just Google Apple Ethernet port. It's actually one of the top hits. Go to the actual Apple article, and they'll walk you through, and they walk through all different scenarios, whether you have Wi-Fi or whether you do not. But kind of interesting, it's another one of those things. It's kind of like when they bricked the phone, when they issued one of their updates a while back. They're just having more and more of these, and it's kind of starting to get a little worrisome that they're not, maybe the quality control over there isn't as tight, especially on the software side. Now on their physical device side, it's actually pretty good, but on the software side, not as much. All right, so I have been doing a lot of hard drive replacements lately. I have a ton of friends right now. I think I've actually got 5 in the works that I have lined up on people's computers who need new hard drives. Now, the first one of these was actually my sister-in-law, and we talked about this a while back, how I was going to be replacing her hard drive. Now, she had a very old 2000 and I believe 2009 MacBook. Now, this was the white plastic version. So it might have been a little bit before 2009. So this is the white plastic MacBook. I mean, extremely old. And she needed a new hard drive. Well, I was actually extremely surprised. So after trying to clone the drive, we tried to clone it, and the old hard drive would just not stay spun up long enough to get all the data off. It would just fail and fail every single time we tried to do the clone. So we just needed to reformat the new hard drive and throw an OS on there and call it good. Now, what I was worried I was going to have to kind of go back in time and find an operating system that would work on this old computer. But surprisingly enough, when Apple issued El Capitan, they really did a great job on making El Capitan available to a ton of different devices, including this extremely old white plastic MacBook. So that was really cool, but I was surprised. I was kind of worried. I said, okay, yes, they say it's compatible, but let's see how well it works. So we got the SSD. We threw El Capitan on it, which was super easy with my iMac. All you have to do is download it and use an external external connection and throw it onto that hard drive. And then you just throw the hard drive in the computer, and it was super slick. And the computer ran like a dream. My sister-in-law came over and I was showing her kind of her new updated computer and how great it was. And it does run faster than the day I think she bought it. So we're really impressed with that. And again, it was just one of those moments where I was kind of happy that Apple continues to do that. A lot of other companies, not naming any names, but they tend to cut off support pretty quickly for older devices or older operating systems. And Apple has been pretty good with Mavericks up until El Capitan with really trying to support as many different devices as they can. And they do it on the iOS side too. I mean, iOS going all the way back to, the iPhone 4, you can still get some of the most recent updates for. So it's good to see that they continue that. Makes it a lot easier on us tech guys who are helping people out. When I can just download the latest and throw it on there and not have to worry about going and finding the download file for an old operating system, it is pretty slick. So that was one thing I was glad to hear. So moving into this next story, this is kind of a story I found by accident. And really, but it was all spawned by Colin being a Google Chromecast
Google
audio
user.
user, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have the Chromecast, or do you just have the Chromecast audio?
I have both. I have the original
Okay.
Chromecast, which is more of the dongle, like
Not the hockey
all-in-one.
puck, more just like the USB stick kind of
Just
thing.
the
It looks
USB stick, basically,
Right.
not so much the like HDMI cable with the thing hanging off.
Right.
So,
And then you have the Chromecast audio as well.
yes.
Okay, so with those two devices, extremely inexpensive devices where you can basically cast whatever you want to cast up onto your TV, or in the case of Chromecast audio, to a pair of speakers. So really cool, super inexpensive, works great. The integration has really spread out, especially on your iOS devices. It's gotten a lot better with what you can use with it. Now, I was kind of in the thought that really you needed a Google Chromecast to do casting features. But I was surprised to see that I was watching a YouTube video actually on my phone, and I was sitting on my couch, and we have our Xbox One that is plugged in. We always use that to watch TV, and so that was on, obviously. And I saw the cast option appear on my phone. I was like, that's interesting, because I don't have any cast devices. So I was like, well, let's see what it can do. So I clicked on it, and it actually showed my Xbox One as an available cast device. Now, I realized this is because I have the YouTube app installed on the Xbox One. So I thought, well, this would be kind of cool. Let's just test it out and see how it works. So I clicked on the video and clicked the cast button, and sure enough, it took me away from TV on the Xbox right to the YouTube app and just started playing the video. It was one of the easiest, coolest features I have ever found on the Xbox, and kind of a surprising nice feature. I'm glad Google does that sort of integration. They realize that the Xbox is a device that we would want to play something on. You have a YouTube app on it. Why not make that a capable casting device? So, Google could kind of be, I hate to say it, Google could be like Apple and say, no, you need our streaming device. Like Apple, you need the Apple TV to do any sort of casting to that. So Google could have done that, said, hey, you need a Google Chromecast. But no, they decided to be really cool and just throw it into the YouTube app. And another cool feature is you can queue up videos for your Xbox. So I was watching the first video, and on my phone, I'm just going through and finding all these tech videos that I want to watch, and you just click add to queue. And then on your Xbox, these videos just keep rolling as you go. Now, I know that was already a feature on the Google Chromecast, but like I said, I just had no idea this existed on the Xbox. And I don't think, Colin, had you experienced that at all?
I mean, I knew it was a thing, but the first time I tried using it, it didn't work correctly. So I kind of just passed it off. It wasn't so much that it was one of those things where I've been using it and I was like, how did you not know this? It was, you told me that and I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Well, and you had kind of already had the experience because you have the Google Chromecast. So you kind of knew the kind of magic of that, of controlling it on your phone and then seeing it up on the TV. And I'd really only done it with the Apple TV before. So now that we use the Xbox One, it was a really cool experience. So yeah, you just need the Google YouTube app on your Xbox, and then you can do it from your phone. Now, to add on to this, if you also use the Chrome browser on your computer, I was like, okay, now this is the true test. So I open up my laptop as I'm sitting on the couch, and I say, okay, I wonder if I go to a YouTube video, if I can also cast it up. Now, I had kind of a mixed experience with this, and I'm not sure if you do or do not need the extension, but it works better with, has been my experience. Sometimes it doesn't pick it up, but I opened up Chrome and I did install the Google Cast extension. Now, you'll see the extension in your menu bar, and when you click on that, it won't show the Xbox. It doesn't show the Xbox as a capable casting device, which makes sense because it can't do the normal casting features. But when you do go to a YouTube video in your browser, it does have the option to cast. Now, like I said, I've done this with and without the extension. And with the computer, I think, Colin, like the experience you were having before is maybe the experience I was having on the laptop. Like it was flaky. Like sometimes it would show up and sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes it would be an option and sometimes it wouldn't.
Because you were using was it basically Cast This tab? Is that what you were using?
Well, see, well, it's just the Google Cast, whatever that's called. There's like the Google branded Cast extension.
Okay, they've definitely, it used to be called Cast This tab.
Right.
When it first came out. So when I first was using it, that's what it was called. But yeah, no, even from the outset, it's always been that way where it'll be casting pretty well. Were you also, when you're trying to do that, was it really behind?
It wouldn't load at all. But when it works, it works. It works perfectly. But it just wouldn't even show up as an option.
Whenever I've done it, sometimes it works perfectly, like you said. Other times it shows up, but there will be a disconnect between the video and the audio somehow.
Okay.
So, I mean, but it is nice that extension kind of allows you can do anything. Like I've used it at work before. We have a Chromecast. When we've used the Chromecast, like I've taken, like, I think it was during the World Cup. I just had the World Cup on my computer and hit cast and just sent it to the TV, and that was fine. So
it definitely expanded like what you can do with it, which is really cool. And the nice part about the Chrome browser is, so my same sister-in-law, they are trying to get a lot of stuff on their TV. They have the Google Chromecast, and they, on her old Mac, that white Mac, we actually, the port that goes out to a TV, even if you were to get the cable, does not do audio at the same time. It was before the mini display port started to support that. So we're like, okay, well, let's try Google Chromecast. She's like, oh, well, the problem is I want to like watch a video I have downloaded on my computer. And it's just like a video file, like, it's P90X. She wanted to do her workout videos on the TV. Well, you can open like any file format in Chrome. It doesn't want to, but if you right click on a video file and say open with, and then you have to change the setting from recommended to like all applications, and you choose Chrome, it'll open the video in Chrome, and then you can cast the tab. When we tested it, it worked great, and it was kind of cool. So you can open any sort of file you want in Chrome. You could open a presentation, you could open pretty much anything, and then cast that tab up onto your TV. So kind of a little life hack there. If you want to do any sort of presenting from your computer and that's your only option, you try opening the file or whatever type of file you are trying to open. Try opening it in Chrome. And again, your computer probably won't suggest it. You'll have to do some finagling, but you can definitely make it do that. And then what I did was I knew she was going to want to watch those videos in Chrome every time and Chromecast them. So I just set that as the default app for those files, which on the Mac side, it's a file by file default. So I had to highlight all the videos, go in and make that the default application. But after that, it worked perfectly, which is kind of cool. And Colin, you mentioned there's actually another way you can do this with another YouTube app with the built-in TVs. Is that correct? On the smart TV?
Yeah. So with smart TVs, I think I used it a little bit, and I think that may have been my problem, is that I added like my YouTube or just my Google whatever to the YouTube on my TV, and I think that's where now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm thinking that's where the disconnect
comes to realization as you're having a conversation.
Look at that. 9 months later, it's like,
right.
Oh,
that's why.
But so yeah, you can do the same thing where that was really annoying when I would try and connect it to my Xbox. Then all of a sudden my TV would switch, and I'm like, no.
I didn't want you to do that. I want the Xbox to do it. See, that's cool. I'll have to try that. I have not enabled any. We have a smart TV, but we don't use any of the smarts. I've never even opened up the menu. So that'd be kind of cool though. If we use,
I regret doing it. I don't know why I did, especially when I had an Xbox.
Right. But if you had a smart TV in a location where you didn't have a box, if you didn't have an Xbox, you didn't have any sort of like device, then it would be kind of cool to be able to do that. So
no, the reason I did it was Amazon. Amazon wasn't on Xbox One yet for some reason.
Oh, but it was on your TV.
But I had it on my TV, so that's what I used and then 3 months after I added on my TV, and I've like added all of my stupid things. Amazon shows up on Xbox. I was like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. I still get software updates for my TV that pop up while I'm doing stuff. I'm like, I probably don't need this because I don't use any of your stuff. But
I've never gotten a software update on my TV.
I get software updates on the TV, and maybe it's because I don't have it set to automatic, but they still pop up like, hey, do you want to, like, an update's out? Do you want to download it? I'm like,
yeah,
sure,
if you don't use anything,
sure, go for it. I just let it. I'm like, yeah, maybe it'll, I don't know,
if it's
something.
Is it a Samsung?
It is an LG.
Oh, then never mind. If it was Samsung, it's like, yeah, they're just trying to listen to you better.
Yeah. Trying to monitor me more, right? Yeah, maybe I should stop using all these smarts now with this whole Apple situation that's got going on.
No, they already know where we are, so.
They know a lot about me. You can find out pretty much anything you want about me online. So that's kind of how I live my life.
I have a blog. They know everything.
Yeah. They know your eating habits. They know what you like, what you dislike, who you're.
Oh, yeah. I'm not hiding anything anymore.
Yeah, right. All right, so we're gonna as we're getting to the end of the show, I do have one tip for you, and it kind of relates to the Google Cast, like we were just talking about. But one thing that I did recently, and then what got me thinking about it was it actually got brought up in a different Facebook group I'm in. But what got brought up was traveling around and having to do presentations on all sorts of different projectors, TVs, sort of stuff. And what's kind of the easiest way to do that? And do you carry around a bunch of dongles? What do you do to be prepared for any sort of situation? And so I offered up my 2 thoughts in the Facebook group, and it's something maybe I haven't talked about here too often. But what I've always done is, and I've had to do this a few times at school, and one time was just really random why I needed to do it. I think it was actually I was setting it up for my mom and what she was going to do. And I didn't use it that time. It was actually, I learned from the experience when she was trying to connect to something. I learned from the experience and thought of this workaround. So my kind of, if you have to travel around and if you have to give presentations and you have to give them from your computer, one solution could be if you can call ahead and confirm that wherever you're going has HDMI in. As long as they have HDMI in, there are a few different options you could do. Now, one would be Google Chromecast. Obviously, you could take your Chromecast and you could plug it in and open up your presentation in Chrome, and away you go. Another option would be the Apple TV. If you're on the Apple side, which I am, this is what I was thinking. The Apple TVs are extremely portable. They're a little tiny square, and you would be able to plug the HDMI in and then stream through the Apple TV and go up to the TV. Now, the only problem with that is that is relying on the Wi-Fi network of wherever you are at, or the fact they even have a Wi-Fi network that you can access. So that always tends to be an issue, especially because presentations a lot of times happen, in like conference halls that don't have Wi-Fi, or hotels that maybe the Wi-Fi is slow or locked down. So the workaround to this is also travel with a little travel-sized router. Now, the Apple Airport Express is, I think, by far one of the best options for this, one of the most powerful, extremely tiny. It's a tiny little square that you could easily throw in your bag, especially if you threw that in the Chromecast or the Apple TV together. It's one power cord. It's not really that bad. So what you can do with that travel router is pretty much just create your own wireless network. Now, there won't be internet running to that network, but you have a private network that you connect your laptop to, and you connect the Chromecast or the Apple TV to, and then you have a guaranteed flawless workaround to any sort of presentation. As long as they have HDMI in, that's the only thing that you need to know from them ahead of time. If they have that, then you have an instant wireless presentation setup. So that would be really cool, especially if you don't know where you're going to be presenting from. Like, okay, am I going to have to be really close to the projector? You don't care anymore because you put your device by the projector or the TV, you take your laptop wherever, and you are good to go. You can present from anywhere in a wireless fashion. So kind of cool, because PTD just said in the chat room, he says, yeah, because none of those devices support WPA2 enterprise networks, which is true. That is what they use down at the university that I go to. And so you can't use those sort of connection methods, which one of the students recently found out the hard way, because that's how he was planning on giving his presentation, and it didn't work. So we had to transfer the file to a different computer that had the dongle that worked. So if you want to save yourself some money, because those dongles are not cheap, especially the Apple side, they're like $30 a piece, and you need like 5 of them to make sure you have all of them. So that could be a pretty quick workaround. And I've seen it a lot more too in conference rooms of actual businesses. Like they have this set up already. So sometimes it can already be set up for you. Colin, at your work, do you guys use any of sort of this wireless like presentation stuff, or do you guys just have a cord that you can plug into any of your laptops?
I'm like, if we go anywhere to give a presentation?
No, like just in your conference room. Like in your conference room, if you want to give a presentation, do you just bring your laptop in, or?
Oh, no, we have, so where our conference room is and where my boss's office is, there's just a wall in between. So we have a TV on the wall that like kind of butts up to his wall, and then he has a computer tower. So
nice. So just
if someone
plug it in
has
there.
anything, yeah, we'll just plug like a USB, have that, and be able to like run everything. The
That's
TV
cool.
just acts as our computer. So
Right. So for situations like that, you wouldn't even need it. But for the travel scenario, and the same sort of thing for our work at our presentation, actually, there's a tower in each conference room, and you just remote into your computer that's in the office, and you're controlling your computer, and you can give your presentation that way. So that's how we do it. But if a guest came in, I guess obviously would not be able to do that, but they could plug in an HDMI cord and be all set. So that was just my one little tip for you guys who are wanting to travel around and give presentations. Colin, is there anything else that we need to mention that we need to catch up on over the past 2 weeks?
not that I'm aware of. There really hasn't been a whole lot of talk out of Apple's camp. They're supposed to have, it's March now, and that was the original rumored month of the,
and I think it still will be.
So the early spring, whatever. It's not WW.
It's not WWDC. It's just their kind of spring announcement. It's because WWDC will be in June or July. So this is their spring announcement where they're gonna maybe release the new C version of the phone.
Yep.
Yeah, the 4-inch phone. So if you guys liked those phones, kind of the plastic colored back phones, they're rumored that they're going to come out with a new version of that. Obviously, upgraded version, new processor, and all of that jazz. Also, new iPads and probably the next version of the Apple Watch. So the Gen 2 Apple Watch, which I am extremely interested in. That's probably one of the items that I'm following the most. Not because I'm going to get one, because I have the Gen 1 and it works fantastic. It's by far my favorite device I own. But the Gen 2, and after having this, I had so many suggestions for them. It's so easy to have suggestions when you don't have the device. But now after I have this, I'm like, man, the things I was suggesting would not work well. Like they would not be good ideas. And Apple's pretty good about thinking ahead on that. So I'll be interested to see what they put in. Like, will he put in a cell radio?
A lot of the ideas that you had, I talked you down from.
You did, yes. That's usually how it goes. I get like really excited about something, and I think, oh, this would be a great idea. And Colin's always there to kind of like bring me down to earth and be like, maybe not. No, it probably wouldn't be a good idea.
It's the problem with being a realist, or is a lot of people like to see it being a cynic, but no.
That's true.
Let's be realistic about this.
Yeah. And I like to like really jump ahead and be all excited about things and come up with crazy ideas that probably would never work. So, yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that, though.
No,
there's nothing wrong with
both type of people in the world. You need both types. So that's why you're my co-host, because it makes a perfect pair.
See, I play both in my head. It's just the realistic is the one that ends up coming out most times.
Right. Cool. So we'll keep up on that. Obviously, that is going to be mid-March, so we will have an update there. We are not here next week. I know we were just gone for 2 weeks, and those were unexpected. This next one has been known for a long time. I am out of town, so I will not be here next Wednesday, but we will be back the week after that. So if you guys need shows, though, to catch up on Home Gadget Geeks, there's no show this week, but next week when there's no open mic night, head over there and listen to Home Gadget Geeks. And I think you guys would really like it. It's over on theaverageguy.tv. You can head over there and listen to that show. So quickly, again, we just want to thank OMN Radio, and we want to mention that we are a part of also thegeeksnetwork.com. So if you're looking for other tech podcasts, head over there. And everything about this show and any other shows that I'm in charge of is over at 2980network.com. And also, please take the survey. If you guys have not taken the survey and you are listening to this right now, if you could take 5 minutes and head on over to 2980network.com/survey, that would really help us out. Like I said, it's 10 questions, maybe 5 minutes, if that doesn't take too long. So that would really help us out. Colin, thank you for coming back for another week. Thank you for being there for me when I had a broken leg. The thing that I didn't mention was that Colin, that same night at the ER, was gracious enough to help me up the stairs so I didn't fall, and I actually did fall, and he was there for me.
He fell forward, so that was a good thing.
Yeah,
and it was at the landing. So
yeah, I didn't fall back into him, but he was there for me, and he was helping me out while I had the broken. Well, I still do, but while I was in my initial stages. So a big thank you to him. So we'll be back in 2 weeks, but until we see you guys then, tech on. All right.